Hey guys, Alex from 7th Hour Films back again with Sailor Moon. Last time around we covered the Infinity Arc as well as reacted to Sailor Moon S the movie. This time around we're going to be tackling the Dream Arc of chapters 39 to 49. Now you may have noticed something different about this video to my normal manga reviews. Well, here's the thing. I've technically already recorded my review of the Dream Arc, but I was actually not satisfied with it. It was the same as my normal unscripted videos, but I kinda got a little mad in the video. So I decided that it was a little too exacerbated and overly long, and I just didn't like it, so I wanted to basically redo it and fix it. My solution was to write a script and explain my problems with the Dream Arc in a more concise manner. Like always, this is a review of the manga chapters, but I will also be using corresponding footage from the anime to basically keep this a bit more visually interesting. So, with that said, before we actually start on the Dream Arc itself, I do actually want to talk about the chapter The Love of Princess Kaguya before we get started. So let's quickly talk about that. For those that watch my review of the Infinity Arc, you'll know that I started reading this chapter before I filmed that video, but I wasn't able to quite finish it. Then I reacted to Sailor Moon S the movie, which happens to be an adaptation of this chapter. Well, now that I'm done with that, I have actually finished the chapter, and I wanted to point out a few things that I noticed. First off, Minako's response to learning about Luna being in love with a human is different. In the movie, she's very concerned about Artemis's feelings and tries to be sensitive. However, this is actually the complete opposite in the manga, as Minako gives Artemis a hard time about neglecting Luna, even saying that just because they have a daughter in the future doesn't actually guarantee they'll always be together. Which I suppose is true, but I still think the rules of time are a bit wonky in this series. Also, I wanted to point out that Minako admits to murdering her first love, and without context, I'm very confused. The next thing to mention is the villain. Interestingly, she does refer to herself as Princess no Kaguya in the manga, but the biggest difference is her backstory. Apparently she was part of the solar system when it was being formed but was cast out. Now she's returned after 4.5 billion years. This is strange, to say the least. I'm not entirely sure how she works. Is she related to Queen Metalia? What took her so long to return? I think they mentioned the light like in the movie, but it's all very confusing. And that's another point. In the last video I said I had difficulty following what was happening in this chapter, and that remains true even after watching the movie. It's strange because I should understand Kakeru and Himiko, but they just make less sense. I suppose that's really it. It's not a bad chapter, but I think the movie adaptation is far better and a lot easier to follow. Now let's talk about the Dream Arc. And I'll say straight up, I didn't like it. The basic plot is that the sailors are contacted by a mystical Pegasus named Helios, who is looking for a maiden to protect his world, known as Elysium, from our new baddie Queen Van Halen. Okay, I know it's like Queen Nehelenia or something, but I immediately couldn't remember it or pronounce it properly, so I'm just going to be sticking with Queen Van Halen. At the same time, it's revealed that Prince Endymion is the leader of Elysium and has his own discount silver crystal known as the Golden Crystal. Along the way, the sailors face the Amazon Quartet and have to overcome their greatest nightmares. Okay, let's start with the positives. I really like chapters 43 and 44 that dealt with the Outer Sailors' new life and Minako's dreams. Firstly, I love the Outer Sailors. I think I made that abundantly clear in the last review, but they're still great here. Haruka and Michiru have settled into their roles as Hotaru's new mothers and do their best to raise her. Pluto, on the other hand, is finding some difficulties. When we first see them, Hotaru is playing with some dishes while Pluto is trying to work. It's clear that Pluto is not cut out for this whole mother thing and doesn't even check on Hotaru when stuff starts to break. While that sounds like negligence, and well, let's face it, it is, it's kinda hilarious. The girl just wants to get some work done. Luckily, Michiru and Haruka, as well as Haruka's vendetta against shirt buttons, return before anything else goes wrong. I really like the family dynamic with the four of them. It's clear none of them were prepared to raise Hotaru, especially after she started growing at an insane pace, but they're doing their best. Then, as they start to realize what's happening to the other Guardians, Hotaru reawakens as Sailor Saturn and the four of them return to the fray. It's honestly a great reintroduction to the Outer Sailors and makes me want a spin-off just about them. The next positive is Minako's story from that section. Minako, like the others, can't transform into Sailor Venus and is struggling with her role as a leader. This was interesting, as when I was reading the Dark Kingdom arc, I thought Minako was more of a leader than Usagi. She was the one with the most experience and knowledge, but it was clear that Usagi was the leader because she was the true Princess Serenity. So to suddenly have Minako try to resume her role as leader is a surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. It felt way better than the nightmares that the others were going through, as it was more about where she was now as opposed to her future. Even when she can't transform, Minako does everything in her power to save the day, which leads to an incredible moment with Artemis as he helps her remember she's not alone and the two of them can face anything as long as they're together. It's really touching, actually, even though Artemis becomes a human, but we'll get to that later. It's honestly the most impactful of the Sailor Crystal moments, as you have the history between Minako and Artemis, even if you didn't read the Sailor V manga. Absolutely amazing. Well, that's it for the positives, so now let's get to what I didn't like in this arc. Buckle up, folks, I've got a lot to say. First, let's talk about Elysium and Mamoru. Mamoru is actually given prominence in this arc.
And there was much rejoicing.
Or at least for a bit. See, here's the thing. You could honestly cut Elysium out of this arc and lose nothing. Long ago, Prince Endymion ruled over Elysium and protected the Earth with the Golden Crystal. Sound familiar? Well, it should. It's the same as Princess Serenity. Previously, we were led to believe that Endymion was just a normal human who fell in love with the Moon Princess and died in the war with Queen Metalia. However, Elysium is supposedly the true protectors of Earth. Okay, slight problem. They have done jack all to protect the planet. Think about it. No mention of Elysium in any of the previous arcs. Where were they when Metallica attacked? Both times. What about Death Phantom and Pharaoh 90? Where were you on that one, horse boy? On top of that, they say that Prince Endymion can use the Golden Crystal, but they need to find it. Usagi, in the smartest thing she's ever done, tells Mamoru that it's probably within him like the Silver Crystal was within her. Well, that's actually pretty logical, and it actually works. But why did it never awaken before? Why didn't Prince Endymion use it against Metalia? My theory is that it's because the Golden Crystal is as useless as Tuxedo Mask is. Well, when he started out, at least. Not only that, the Golden Crystal does absolutely nothing in the final battle. It's completely useless. Like I said, you can cut out Elysium and not lose anything. Helios is only there to tell the sailors about Queen Van Halen, which they would have figured out anyway. It's really pointless. My other problem with Elysium is that I feel like it takes away from Princess Serenity. Think about it. The whole plot of the past was that the Moon Princess was the chosen hero to protect not only her kingdom, but also the Earth, even though she didn't need to. This bond with the Earth is strengthened by her love for Prince Endymion, which remains so powerful that in her next life as Sailor Moon, the two can use their connection to unlock the Silver Crystal, yeet multiple bad guys, and ascend to Super Sailor Moon. It was their love that did that. Their love should never have happened. Hell, Chibiusa is a hybrid child of the Moon Princess and Earth Prince. She is a literal embodiment of their impossible connection. Now I know what you're probably thinking. Wow, Alex, I thought you didn't like their romance. And you're somewhat right, that I didn't care for it in the Dark Kingdom arc. But honestly, I didn't realize what I had until it was gone. Mamoru is now made way too important for that impossible connection to mean anything. Of course the Moon Princess and Guardian Prince would get together. I mean, who's she gonna go for? Jim? Pfft, Jim ain't special. I would also like to quickly mention that I feel like this actually contradicts what's said in the Black Moon arc, and God forbid we mess with that story. But King Endymion basically said that because he was close to the new Silver Millennium, and obviously married to Neo Queen Serenity, that was why he was granted immortality before everyone else. Again, it's the connection, not some dumb bootleg silver crystal. Next up is Chibiusa and her relationship with Helios. So she basically falls in love with him, but feels as though she's cheating on Mamoru. Yep, this is still a thing. Chibiusa still has the hots for her own dad. The best part is that Usagi calls her out on it when she says that when she finally grows up, Mamoru will hopefully see her as a true woman. Usagi justly calls her out on it. In the end, this really only amounts to something Chibiusa can do in this arc, and really doesn't add to the plot. Helios also turns into a man and kisses her. I know she's 903, but still. Ew. And then he says that he's a priest. A priest just kissed a young child. That happened and we all let it happen. Some of the writing decisions in this series just baffle me. We could talk about the sailor's dreams, but I honestly don't want to. They are exact copies of the Temptations from the Infinity Arc. Ami wants to be a doctor but has difficulty studying and being a sailor. Rei wants to be head priestess of Hikawa Shrine, Mako wants a family and a shop, and they all meet their tiny versions of themselves and or animals that become humans. I didn't need to see two birds turn into girls, and I don't want to again. The only dream chapter that works is Minako's because it dealt with the struggle she's facing right now as opposed to her future, and leads to that moment with Artemis. I also don't really like human Artemis, but he's not that bad, I guess. Now let's talk about the villains. First is the Amazon Quartet. Once again, these four are completely boring and arrogant. Nothing new there. However, there are two good things about them. First, their designs are interesting. They're certainly more memorable compared to the Ites, whoever the hell was in the Black Moon arc, and whoever the hell was in the Infinity arc. The Amazon Quartet is extravagant and weird, but I kinda like it. The other positive is the reveal that they're actually Sailor Guardians. Now, first, I was really confused when they explained that they were the guardians of the asteroids Ceres, Pallas, Juno, and Vesta. Not only that, they shouldn't have actually awakened yet. But then it starts to get interesting. Essentially, these four are to Chibiusa what Mercury, Venus, Mars, and Jupiter are to Usagi. And I kinda like that. It's a very interesting concept and is good for Chibiusa's story of growing up, because as soon as she does grow up and become a true princess, the four of them will awaken and, I guess be her posse. Very interesting, actually. But now we must talk about the literal worst part of the entire story. Queen Van Halen. So despite her being another carbon copy of the Great Darkness trope we've had in this series, she even does the cliched light cannot exist without darkness thing, her story is actually somewhat well defined compared to our previous foes, and by God I wish it wasn't. Alright, here's the thing. You ever watch Hercules? You remember Hades? Okay, so Queen Van Halen showed up when Princess Serenity was born. Side note, the young Sailor Guardians are friggin' adorable. But Queen Van Halen wasn't invited to the party. No one actually knows who she is or where she came from, because God forbid we write an interesting backstory. Then she gets all pissy and Queen Serenity seals her away for all eternity. Another side note, Queen Serenity sucks at sealing things away. However, before she is sealed away, Queen Van Halen says that she will curse the Silver Millennium. Years later, Queen Metallica attacks. That's right. Anything interesting about Queen Metallia being a sentient evil sunspot is all just some after effect of a random bitch no one liked. So Van Halen has taken away the coolness from our only halfway decent villain. What else could she ruin? How about Sailor Saturn? Oh yeah, because Queen Van Halen is still around, that means Sailor Saturn missed a spot when she Thanos'd the Silver Millennium. She missed a spot. The woman that can completely yeet a star system by tapping a stick on the ground somehow missed a stationary mirror. Van Halen actively makes interesting things bad. We could also mention that Saturn doesn't just vaporize the quartet or Van Halen in an instant, but that would make her a bit too OP, so I'll let that one slide. Queen Van Halen is honestly the worst villain we've had. She's dumb, her nightmares are dumb, she makes other characters dumb. I really hate her. I should point out that while I was reading, I wrote the word help 3 times in my notes because I didn't understand what was happening. This was mainly around the Princess Sailor thing that happened, where everyone got a new dress and a crystal. I don't get it, and as far as I can tell, it added nothing. Other points we could talk about before the end, well, Tuxedo Mask never used an attack. It seems that once he's the center of the plot, Mamoru won't actually be of use to anything. I kinda missed the Tuxedo La Smoking Bomber, as dumb as that attack is. There was also a whole thing about Mamoru and Usagi having a disease, but that also went nowhere. I did like the 2 or 3 times Usagi was actually involved in the plot because she did have good moments of taking up responsibilities and being the leader she should have always been. However, she's barely in the plot at all. The most memorable thing she does is call out Chibiusa. She also gets a new form, Eternal Sailor Moon, but it's not that interesting. Her final new move is the Starlight Honeymoon Therapy Kiss, which is really stupid, and not in the same way the Tuxedo La Smoking Bomber is stupid, because that's just fun stupid. This was just stupid. To wrap up, I didn't like this art. The plot with Elysium is unnecessary and counterproductive for Mamoru and Usagi. The villains are either boring like the rest, or actively awful like Van Halen. There is some good stuff like the Outer Sailor and Venus Dreams, but all in all, this is a huge step down from Infinity. And that's really a shame. I give Dark Kingdom a pass even though I have major problems with it because it's the first arc. Black Moon is weird, but I liked Pluto and some of the Crystal Tokyo stuff. But Infinity was so incredible because it focused on the Sailor Guardians and introduced 3 more that were excellent additions. Despite the dreams also focusing on the sailors, they just feel like repeats of something already done in the Infinity arc, and done much quicker and better. With all that said, I am still optimistic about the final arc. I want Sailor Moon to end on a high note. Fingers crossed. So that's the review. I hope you enjoyed this different style of video. I'd love to hear what you guys think of this arc as well as this video style in the comments. Tune in next week as I react to Sailor Moon Super S, the movie, the last of the Sailor Moon movies. Then come back in 2 weeks when we wrap up the manga with the Stars arc of chapters 50 to 60. With all that said, I'm Alex from 7th Hour Films, and I will see you guys next time.